Welcome, everyone. Appreciate you joining today. Again, my name is Josh Minthorn. I'm a director here at Excelino. We are a premier Red Hat partner or an Apex partner. What that means is that through a lot of vigorous investment in terms of studying and improving in all of our cumulative experience with Red Hat, we've shown um, our expertise. In fact, both myself and some other members of us here at Excelino are ex-Red Hatters. So we have a lot of experience working with customers, understanding what they're trying to accomplish, and then how do we build a solution and roll that solution out as quickly as possible, and then make sure that customers are successful with that solution moving forward. Right? We don't want to think of things just in the short term. It's really about what's the long-term goal. And that's one of the things that we really want to talk about here today, especially around digital transformation and having that be successful. And digital transformation, as we all know, covers a pretty large number of topics, number of items. But what we want to talk about here today, more specifically, is around automation. And how do you use automation to be able to really help transform processes and some other things, which we'll definitely go into. And what does that look like? So we'll go through this today, and if you have questions, please write those down and add them to the chat. What we'll do is we're going to reserve about 15 minutes before we wrap up today to go through those questions and to answer them. And then once we complete today's webinar, a recording will eventually be up on the Excelino site, as you can see there, excelino.io. We're also going to be sending you a survey. That survey is going to ask you some questions around what was important, what did you find the most interesting, what really applied to you and what your company is trying to do, and how we can continue our conversation, because there's a lot of different ways that, again, as you'll see, that automation and Ansible can be used. So that being said, we're going to go ahead and dive right in. So three things we really want to talk about today. One is the automation journey and what are the benefits, what's that look like? I'm sure some of you are either through that journey somewhere on the spectrum, or maybe have not yet started. Maybe you're doing some planning. So again, kind of somewhere within that. And as part of that, where does the Ansible automation platform fit into that automation journey, and again, aligning to the benefits of what we look for when it comes to automation. And then, what we'll do is we'll wrap up, review everything we discussed, and also talk about some use cases and some success stories that we at Excelino have had with Ansible, and how that has helped customers as well. So without further ado, I'm going to jump right in here to the automation journey and the benefits. So one of the key things that we get asked, and also we ask customers, is, okay, what are you trying to automate? Why are you trying to automate? And time again, we see a very specific pattern around, I'm going to say, these pillars, these drivers, and what is it? And really what it is that we are seeing more and more, and this isn't just something that we've seen in the last 12, 18 months. I think it's something that we've probably all seen over the last few years, which is, there's starting to be more and more alignment with IT and business initiatives, because more and more companies are using IT as a strategic capability. It's no longer just something that is used to support something. It's actually a key driver in how a business runs, and also, what can a business introduce and provide to customers? Or, obviously the industry and everything determines that. But again, how quickly can you respond to customer demand? how quickly can you respond to market conditions. We'll go into that because obviously nowadays that's something that we're all going through and is definitely a very unique time. But again, how do you adapt? How do you move? And one of the things that we really see quite a bit that comes up, number one, is self-service. And we ask, okay, why? And we were told, well, we need to reduce the time that it takes to deliver something, which means we get something to the market faster. Now that can take on a lot of different things. It might be that it's actually something that's internal, that supports teams that are actually then building something that will be used by end customers. It could also be something, that is going to be used by end customers, right? And so it runs the gamut of things, but the overall goal is about increasing productivity. And when talking with customers, what we really see is that with self-service, users know what they want and they know when they want it and when they need it. So when they want to be enabled and say, okay, when you want something, here you go. You request it, and you'll somehow it'll be communicated to you that it's now available. And one of the key things with that is, okay, there's a lot of different ways to do that. Where does automation come into play? Well, the automation comes into play that you take out the manual steps, so you get something to somebody faster. And also things are done in a consistent fashion, so that if 6 different people put in a request for the same thing, let's say, they're all going to get the same result. And that's the key piece as well. Now, the next piece there, again, somewhat with self-service, granted, but that's the user interaction, is the ability to accelerate delivery. Now, a lot of times what we see with this is that this comes down to specifically around software and applications, things like that. And they want to be able to accelerate every single aspect of a delivery pipeline. And what's key with that is a couple of things. One is those teams are developers and everything, they're trying to move much faster. Well, they're using, infrastructure and other things to be able to do that. So they need to, again, they know when they need something and what they need. So they want to use it to be able to accelerate the delivery. Right? Every project, has deadlines, has an end goal. So the question is, right, how do you meet that sooner, or help mitigate risk or remove potential delays, right? Again, always about accelerating. And I think that is even more important now, as we not only have a globalized workforce, but we now have very much a remote workforce. And who knows when that'll change. I think at some point it will, obviously, but are we going to go back to the way it was? Or are we always now going to sort of have some, sort of hybrid workforce? But at the end of the day, again, we still have this distributed workforce. So how do we make it easy for distributed teams to be able to continue to work together and accelerate things? And then the next piece is, well, we have this new technology, but we've got this old technology, and right, we've got to work across both of those. Now, this is a little more focused on the IT side of things, more specifically. We work with customers that, for instance, they're installing new servers and new hardware, or they're migrating from one type of platform to another. And they it's not a switch overnight. There's a migration period and everything. And sometimes what it is that there's always going to be this quote unquote new and this old technology. And so how do you, again, be able to work consistently across all of those technologies? And what's interesting with this too is we say new and old technology, and one thing to remember there is that today's new technology will be next year's old technology, because technology is one of those things that we know. There's the phrase of death and taxes. Well, also technology. Technology is always in a constant state of moving and progressing. So how do you, again, make sure that when the time is right, you've invested in technologies, get everything out of that you need, and when it's time to invest in new technologies, right, you want to know that you can continue to automate and work across all of those technologies. It's this constant change over a very long time period. So again, right? What do we see working with customers? These are the three key things that we see about what's driving and why automate IT. And again, it's about, IT and business really converging and now working together as opposed to what we used to see many, many years ago. So when we think through this, right, let's be upfront, right? There's absolutely things that can get in the way of this success, right? We want to automate something, not just to automate something. The goal is to take out manual steps to really increase productivity and efficiency, and really, and this is what I really like to think of it as, is that have individuals focus on the gray matter exercises. And what I mean there is those high value things, right? Have them, employees focus on the things that are going to continually to add value, right? To innovate, to do things better, because as a whole, the business continues to get better. The company starts to get better. There's that invested relationship there. And what we see, talking with customers that are either somewhere on the automation journey, or if we're talking to customers that it's new, we go over these things. Again, seeing some patterns, some things that we see is everybody's excited. It's great. All right, we're gonna automate it, and it's fantastic. And we get almost a little bit ahead of ourselves, and we don't fully understand the process being automated. What's great with that is that it's just a little bit of due diligence to be able to really understand and do that. Because one of the key things too is to not only understand the process being automated, but also to then look and say, is this the same process that we want? Because as we have seen, and I've seen hands-on experience working with customers, is if you take a process and you go to automate it, it doesn't necessarily immediately start to solve everything. What I have seen is that the process isn't revisited and looked at, it ends up happening is actually the process tries to get shoehorned in, and now the issues with the process start to multiply because you can now actually go through that process a little bit faster. So again, the question is, what is the process, and is this the opportunity to change the process and do things differently? A lot of times when we go through that, we actually simplify the process. We can cut out a lot of steps, not just by cutting out the manual pieces, but actually cutting out some of the steps. Because again, this is that opportunity to say, hey, let's again look at this and see how do we get to the end state as quickly as possible, right? And keeping it simple. Now, the next piece, right? Simple tasks. So we are big proponents of start small and then build, right? Don't try to boil the ocean. We like to look at things and start with simple tasks. Why? Well, that's where you're going to start to see the benefits. You can start to build that muscle memory of that automation and everything. The thing though that happens is a lot of times that's where it will stop, right? Let's do the easy stuff. The easy stuff is great, but it's the complex things that, and they may not be done often, that end up typically taking the most amount of time. So really it's start with the simple tasks, but then really dive in to those other tasks as well. Again, what's the end goal, and let's automate that from start to finish. Another piece too that we see, and this is something that we as Excellion do with all of our customers, is a lot of hands-on mentoring and everything, has to do with upskilling. What we want to do is that, working across lots of different teams, different skill sets and backgrounds and everything, is an investment in the training to understand how to leverage, in this case, talking about Ansible, how to leverage Ansible for each of those individual teams in that collaboration and how that comes together. Because we want to make sure that this isn't just automate these tasks and be done with it. For right now, it's continue to automate, because there's going to be new technologies, there's going to be new requests and other things that come in, and we want to make sure that those can be handled and addressed. That's that long-term success and investment. What we've also seen is everybody's kind of looking at the automation journey and saying, okay, well, we need this, we need this, we need this, we need this, and start to go look at individual solutions and products to do that, and you get this mishmash. And now you've got to support those things individually, and you've got to integrate those things individually, and that becomes very complex and becomes very challenging. So, you know, then this is where Ansible comes in, right? Using it as a holistic platform, and how does that fit into the larger picture? Because I will say, right, and we'll talk about this, Ansible doesn't do everything. What it does is it focuses on automation, and it does that very, very well. And it is specifically been architected and is meant to sit in an environment with other platforms that do things very, very well. For instance, ticket creation, let's say, or logging and monitoring, for instance, right? All these things come together, security, right? All these things come together to create something that allows you to have an automated infrastructure, again, self-service, and making sure that everything is also secure and being done in a consistent manner. The other piece, you know, team silos, and really what this is that it's about collaboration. So teams tend to operate in islands, and they'll think about their piece of automation, but yet they learn things. They learn about just best practices and other things that needs to be shared with other teams. And that's critically important too. And also, when we think about infrastructure and things like that, there's a lot of different teams involved. Yes, let's say networking and maybe a Linux team, and a Windows team, or whatever the teams are. They've got different responsibilities and areas of focus, but yet it's still all the same infrastructure, right? I think of it very much like building a car, right? Someone builds the engine, someone's painting, someone's installing stuff, someone's working on, you know, all these other pieces. Right? Everybody's working together to go from all of the bare parts to a finished product, and it's very much the same thing. As everybody's needs to work together to get to that end goal. And then the other piece here is the enablement of adoption, right? And what this comes to is right, that consistent planning and prioritization around automation to make sure that you realize the full benefits of everything. So what are some keys to a successful automation journey, right? Three things here: people, process, and the platform. And we're going to dig into this. We've already touched on some of these things, but we're going to continue to dig into this further. So starting with people, right? When we think about the journey to the automation transformation, right? So different team needs, right? Each team's, again, different focus area and everything. So you've got the line of business, you know, they're looking at it saying, look, I need these custom applications or this functionality, whatever it is, and they've got some audience for that, whoever that may be. They're not necessarily concerned with what's taking place behind the scenes, as long as everything works as expected and is up and running and everything else. And then you've got the network team, and let's say, you know, device management, reconfiguring the network, adding things to the network, securing the network, whatever that may be. You know, so they're not necessarily aware of what's happening with all of the applications. They're just making sure that all the ones and zeros are flowing through the cables and everything, and that things go where they should go, or stopped when they shouldn't go somewhere. Security. Now, security, that can be broad there, depending on how your organization is set up, but what are they looking at? Compliance, what are the vulnerabilities, what's in the environment, where is it currently at, how do we know, and when was something last looked at, and if an issue was found, some vulnerability was found, then how do we know when it will, or if it was addressed, and do we need to address it? And also, as you do address it, where has it already been done? Because you probably have to maybe schedule some things there, right? So they want that to also be done quickly, especially if it's something that is, you know, critical in terms of vulnerabilities, things like that. Now, you've got operations teams, right? They're going to deploy servers. They're going to, you know, making sure that the OS is installed, things like that, maybe storage, stuff like that. but they're making sure that things are kind of just up and running. Now, developers, what are they doing? Well, they're using all of this, right? So they're using the servers that rely on the networking to build something that is eventually going to be used by, let's say, the line of business. But yet security says I need to make sure that everything that is running is secure. And then there's infrastructure, and that's making sure that, hey, if we've got a cloud environment, that's up and running. We got something that's also on-prem, making sure that's up and running. And again, making sure that all of those resources are available. So while you see this kind of line here, I think that it's actually more of just a jumbled picture because, again, everybody has a different purview, but they're actually, again, still all working together. So when we think of, okay, what does this look like? Where do we start? Where are we going to go? A lot of times what we see is, okay, how can we simplify things? And then it's going to say, all right, how do we now start to centralize things? And then how do we start to orchestrate things? I'll give you an example of that. Each team might say, all right, there's this configuration, or I want to build this, or whatever it may be. How do I do that quickly and in a consistent fashion with very little manual or no manual intervention? That's that opportunity piece. Okay, so they've got that. Now, how do we put this self-service in? Maybe other people want to be able to use this. So that's a little bit more of that tactical piece. How do you centralize it, right? Share that. Then the next piece, and this is where we start to get it more into that collaboration and really the transformation, which is how do we now orchestrate our processes? So let's say somebody needs a new server, they request it, it gets spun up, everything gets installed, it gets scanned, all the patches are applied, security's happy, networking, everything is working, traffic flows to it, developers get their hands on it, they install their application, and now they do all their testing, and then they turn it over to the line of business, and the line of business says, this is fantastic, you got it to me faster than I expected, it's working as expected, and it never goes down. Right? So you now orchestrate across all of these groups. And what happens is that you move further to the right. When you start to get into modernization, you start to get these insights, the percentage of the enterprise IT workloads increases. And what ends up happening is you're going through and automating, and now you're collaborating, and now you start to get to a point where you're optimizing. You're going to start to get insights into things, and you're going to be looking into not what can we automate, but what have we already automated that we can actually do better? How can we start to optimize things? So again, you start to, again, move into that automation, and then you start to automate your automation, right? Move faster and make sure that you can handle as much as possible, again, with very little intervention as it takes place. So let's break those silos down. As I said, everybody contributes, everybody collaborates. This is across business units, this is across different groups, either within the business units or across all the business units, whatever it may be. It's everybody has their key focus area, but everybody automate together and share and learn and experience what other people have done, but also don't reinvent the wheel. Right? There might be things that one group has done that another group can use, and it works perfectly. Right? So again, one group can start to automate things that another group may be able to use. Well, you've just accelerated the adoption of automation purely because one group has happened to already do some things that now can be used. So where does the Red Hat Ansible automation platform fall into this, and how does it help accelerate the transformation, right? So as we've talked about, key things, self-service, accelerating delivery, new and old technology, but then also looking at what are we going to automate. Let's focus on more than just the simple. Let's also make sure that we upskill and train everyone, and sharing across the groups, right? And everything that goes along with all of that. So again, where does Ansible automation fit into that? So when you have a subscription to the Red Hat automation platform, you really get three pieces. So there's the automation platform, which is the workhorse of everything, right? So that's what's actually doing the heavy lifting, going out and actually running and getting everything to where you've told it to things need to be. That's where people interact with things and everything that goes there. And that's all those groups, right? Using a single platform across new and old technology, again, across all the groups, distributed, remote, whatever it may be, that's what they're using. Now, there's two other pieces to this, right? So there's this Ansible content. Now, what this is that it allows you to actually leverage pieces of automation for different parts of your infrastructure actually provided by the third-party vendors of pieces of your infrastructure. So a lot of other providers, for instance, there's Nginx and F5, there's IBM, there's Microsoft, there's AWS, there's A10, there's Cisco, there's Arista. I mean, there is a slew of third-party vendors that have made it very, very easy. They've built a library that you can use to configure their products. The goal of that is you don't have to understand how all of that is done. They basically said, hey, here's the things that you can configure for our products. Just tell us what it is. We've taken and made everything very easy in terms of being able to use this with Ansible. So you get all of that content. You can actually also build that on your own and share that. And that's one of the wonderful things about, again, sharing across groups and having others use and learn and reuse what's already been built by other groups. That's that collaborative piece. So again, that helps really and truly accelerate the automation journey. The other piece is the Ansible Cloud Services. Now, what this is that it allows you to do some other things. It allows you to, again, build those libraries and everything, but also start to get insight into what has been automated within your infrastructure. How often is it being used? What are the failure rates? It goes into being able to look at not monitoring in terms of, okay, this infrastructure, yes, it's up and running. What it does is it's more around monitoring of and getting insight into how well are you automating, and getting insight into is something consistently running into issues that could be a problem area to go address, right? It's about getting in that insight again, and then over time optimizing your automation, getting better and better and better, and finding the areas that you can improve upon. And so all of these things together is what the Ansible automation platform is. Again, very, very cohesive and very, very comprehensive from that standpoint. And also, again, there's a lot of the third-party vendors out there that have made it very easy to be able to leverage Ansible to be able to configure their infrastructure and things. So just a little, kind of digging this in a little bit further. So one of the things, right, a couple of things that you get with all of this. So there's the automation fabric. Here's the best way I like to explain Ansible if you're not familiar with it. With Ansible, you don't have to tell it how to get to an end state. You tell Ansible the end state, and Ansible will get it there. And that's what that automation fabric is. And it allows you to describe that end state and everything that's included in whatever that end state is, and then be able to build everything out. And again, that can be done across a very diverse set of architectures. We actually worked with a customer. They were in every single cloud provider, and they also had on-premise, and they were global. They wanted to make sure that applications were deployed into any of those providers the same way. They also had other things where they wanted to make sure Windows or Linux was done the same way, regardless of where it was. So we were able to do that, and we were able to reuse the way that those things were deployed, those applications, how Windows and how Linux was configured, right? We were able to reuse that regardless of where it actually lived. And that's part of that automation fabric and making sure that it's scalable. Cloud services, you see their collaboration and the operational analytics and everything. Again, getting insight across all the teams and all the automation that's being done across all of your architectures and saying, where are we doing this? Where haven't we done this? And where are there opportunities to continue to optimize and improve? And that way, everybody is in this together, right? All of the different teams and everything are now working together across that shared goal of of automation and everything. Now, I talked about, again, third-party providers. That's that certified content where you can extend the domain, and honestly, it's really and truly about accelerating adoption. It's the whole goal of all of that is to just make it faster and easier to automate, because it's great to have automation, but if your automation platform now takes up all the time you're trying to save through automation, then you're just kind of changing out one thing for another. So the goal is get up and running quickly and make it very, very easy so that you really and truly are saving time. So when we combine all of this, what have we seen across customers? So when we, think of those outcomes, there was a study done by Red Hat across a lot of different customers, and you can see as we break this down across really the different audiences and everything, you saw that there's an increase in revenue. That a lot of times was attributed to the fact that that whatever that line of business was in charge of, they could release sooner or have less downtime. And that came down to customer value. And that's how they were able to generate, that increase in revenue. One of the bigger things we see is you see their productive infrastructure management teams in operations, right, 68% more productive. A lot of that comes from taking away a lot of the manual things that have to be done. And also, it's not just when things have to be done once, it eliminates a lot of having to go redo something, because, we're all human, something was maybe missed or misconfigured, whatever it was, right? You do things in that very standard iterative way in a repeatable fashion. From the developer standpoint, huge increase here, and I think, talking to customers, what they see is that because this increase in developer productivity, right, you see the line of business increase, they can develop more applications. And that could also either new applications, especially when we see a lot of modernization taking place. Nowadays, right, developers became more productive. Why? They could get environments when they needed them very, very quickly. And that sped up the amount of time they could then write code and do everything and get something out the door faster, because, again, they had what they needed sooner, so they could actually deliver sooner. From a security standpoint, we see an increase there, again, because you can get insight into what's going on. You can very quickly patch and upgrade and make sure things are secure very, very easily in a very methodical fashion. We've worked with customers that wanted to use, if you're familiar with it, CIS scanning, which is a subset of what is known as STIG. That's government-based recommendations. And they apply that, and immediately they can get an output and says, well, this is not where it needs to be, and they can get it fixed, and then they can just make sure that things are always there. So it also starts to move things into not only being more efficient, and a lot of that comes down to really being proactive and understanding the state of patches and upgrades and things like that. From the network side of thing, the biggest thing that we see is a reduction in unplanned downtime, purely because they're taking away a lot of the manual work. Everything is automated, so updates, changes, adding new equipment, things like that is done very quickly. And also, they don't have to, also with planned downtime, right? They can reroute traffic very easily, make changes and route it back as well. But again, it allows really make sure things are up and running. Now, from an IT leadership perspective, pretty big number there, right? 498% see a 5-year ROI within 5 months. And again, that's because Ansible is very comprehensive, works across multiple teams. And again, there's also that new and that old technology. So today's landscape, right? What we're dealing with nowadays is very, very different. So what we now are seeing, that self-service was always key, but now we're seeing that because so many individuals are now remote, not just a single team, let's say, is in one office. Now, all the individuals of that team are now in their own office, and there's still these complex activities need to take place, right? Self-service is even more important. And we now want to make sure that as we have this remote workforce, this very mobile workforce, one of the key things too is that we do not compromise security and that we have governance. And again, that falls into the automation piece. As we all know, and I think this is true kind of really all the time, is we're always trying to either do more with what we've got, or we're trying to do this the same maybe with less, and that always comes down to resources. So how do you build that business resilience when you might have limitations on resources? And automation is a key piece to that, and so is the collaboration. And the other thing too is it seems like everybody wants something yesterday, and so how can we build and develop and deploy applications using automation and get it taken care of and done in the shortest period of time possible? Again, always comes back down to the automation, not only of building and deploying, but everything that is needed to support that. So as we start to wrap up here, what are some of the success stories that we have seen, both as Excelino working as a Apex partner? So number of things, right? We look at this real quick. You look at the Army and everything. So they had lots of operating systems, poor SLAs. They wanted to have a very predictable and repeatable process. And for them, the biggest thing was downtime. That represented a major risk. So we're leveraging Ansible. They had the change in delivery time was 75% reduction. So massive reduction in terms of not only across all of their environments, but how quickly they could get something out there, and really and truly mitigated a lot of the downtime because they could be far more flexible. Now here, Datacom, so they needed to scale to multiple clouds, and what they found challenging with that, and I think everybody, to be quite honest, actually finds this challenging, is that every cloud does things a little bit differently, and there's different lingo, there's just different ways to operate, and so on and so forth, and that's a different set of tools and knowledge that's required. What they wanted to do was say, abstract away whatever the cloud was. When somebody needs something, they can choose what cloud it's in or what have you, but they wanted it to just really be done, right? They wanted things faster. So with Ansible and reusing everything, they found a 20% efficiency gain, and one, being able to scale, but then also all the other gains that they found as well with the teams being able to, again, use resources across the different cloud providers. Microsoft with Ansible. So with them, it was around networking. And if you've ever done networking troubleshooting or know people that have done that, it can be very time consuming, and a lot of times it will require some senior engineers, and that's what it was for Microsoft. So their mean time to recovery was reduced by 98%. 98%. Because they could so quickly identify and then remediate known issues, but also it didn't always now require senior engineers, right? So maybe some of the folks that weren't quite as experienced could rectify the issue. And along, the big thing with this too is that they also just had far less issues because things were done in an automated fashion. So NetApp, right? They reduced from weeks down to 2 days of the delivery time, so very quickly now expedited how quickly they could deliver things. And part of that too was around their disaster recovery and their failover and failback and everything when it came to returning back to operations and what they needed with everything. So the question is where does your journey start? And I think it's more of a question of, have you already started and where are you? Because there's a lot of things to look at, right? There's what are the right now opportunities, and then how do you grow that? There's tactical, and how does that all feed into the strategic piece, right? That's that larger picture we talked about when we talked about some of the delays and challenges. So one of the things that's always important is that there's kind of some levers, right? Speed, impact, scale, and kind of saying, okay, well, what's most important? And that's going to change a little bit over time. Priorities change, that's okay, but it's about understanding how do you manage all of these things as things change to make sure that you're successful on this journey. So again, we covered a number of things here. So one is around speed, how quickly can something get out the door? Again, end users know that when they want something, they know when they want it, they know what they need, so empower them, right? And also troubleshooting and a lot of other things as we saw with, things, for instance, Microsoft and the Army and everything. So talking about speed, solve problems once and share the results with everybody. Again, that reusability, that collaboration, new and old technology in the distributed workforces. Here's the big thing here. Help the teams become more productive by removing complexity. When I talked about looking and evaluating processes, when we look at automation, that's the time to look at the processes to see, is this the actual process that we need to continue with? Can we simplify this? And also too, through automation, because you're now breaking down silos and other things, you can remove a lot of complexity, and that means more productivity. The other thing here is reduced costs so that you can change where funds are allocated. As everybody knows, we want to be driving towards innovation, and that's where we want to focus on. So reduced costs can be a number of things, tools and platforms to manage everything. What's how quickly can you recover? How many people does it take to recover? How many people does it take to currently operate everything? You could actually potentially reduce the number it takes to operate everything, keep the same people, but now have everybody really focused on that innovation, right? So a lot of things that we've covered here that Ansible really provides besides just automation, right? It's more than that. Now, where have we worked with customers? So with a health plan provider, now we leveraged Red Hat OpenShift, but also Ansible. What we did is we built everything so that they could very quickly provision and manage infrastructure and deploy applications and patch everything. It used to take this customer 3 months to build an environment to test something that was new. We reduced that down to less than a week. They had some of their processes and everything. Massive change for them, massive impact for them in terms of how quickly they could move. We worked with a bank. It was one of the number 13 best banks in 2020, according to Forbes. This was around network infrastructure. Basically, they had an ever-growing network infrastructure. It was very, very complicated. And what was happening is that network projects were becoming delayed due to a lot of the changes required and everything. So what we did is we helped them implement Red Hat Ansible and infrastructure as code, and to be able to automate all of this. And now they reduced their changes by 90%, and now they caught up on 3 months of backlog work, and now all projects are delivered on time. So we've got some questions here in the chat that I'm going to go through. Rich asked, when we moved from Puppet to Ansible, the one feature that was lost in the transition was the ability to enforce configurations across static hosts, VMs, or EC2 instances. That feature doesn't exist with Ansible. Is it the right tool for the piece of the job? So I'm not sure, how you did the migration, Rich. Um, so with Ansible, right, the way that that works a little bit differently than Puppet, right? So Puppet has an agent that runs on it. It's going to always be checking in, and if it sees that whatever it's on, in this case, in a VM or an EC2 instances, if it sees that it is out of sync, so you've gotten drift, and that's different than what it should be, it will automatically start to fix that. Now, that is due to the way that Puppet is set up. With Ansible, you don't have an agent. And that's why with Ansible, if Ansible can connect to it, it can manage it. That's where what we recommend is kind of a multi-pronged approach, which is with Ansible, you can schedule when things run, and if Ansible sees that there's a difference, it will automatically put it in the state that you've described. Um, and then also that's where we, working with customers, we start to ask, how did that change happen? Why, does somebody have access that they should no longer have? Kind of things like that. Because again, when configuration drift like that happens, it's a question of, is that something that should be allowed, or do we now need to start to remove access and what individuals may be able to change? But that's a very, very good question. Again, you can make sure that things are configured a certain way. It's just a question of how you do that. Stephen, great question. So Stephen said, what's the best strategy to share playbooks across an entire company versus your group? Very, very good question. So with the Ansible automation platform, there is a UI. It has traditionally been referred to as Ansible Tower. Ansible Tower follows RBAC, so you can plug that in Active Directory, what have you. And that allows you to share those playbooks so that people, right, technically they can run them as needed, but won't have access to them, or you can um, control who even has access to those different jobs and things like that. There's a couple of ways to do that. Let's see. Angus said, kind of respond to that. Does that depend on the role? Very good question. So Angus, if you're referring to an Ansible role, that's a little bit different. That Ansible role refers to, what's the infrastructure role. When I think of RBAC, it's more about a user, right? So a user logs in the tower. What group are they a part of? What are they allowed to do? What are they allowed to see? So it would be their role in an organization, which would determine what would they be able to see. But that's how you would be able to share that. Also, right, with the automation hub and everything, that's also how you can share across groups and teams as well. Yes, Angus, that's correct. Playbook devs would be using Git. We recommend that when the playbooks that are being written are stored in version control like Git, so that one, you've got traceability of a commit and change history, but also, as Angus, you said, there's consumers and producers of playbooks, and that's 100% correct. Right, those developers or whoever that is that's writing those playbooks, they're the producers of those playbooks. They may not be the ones running them, they might be. Again, they might kind of play both roles. And so they're going to produce them, and that's where everything is source control. When you consume a playbook, that's where Tower comes into play. Right, it's going to pull from source control and then go ahead and run those and get the infrastructure or what else you've described in those playbooks into the state that you've stated. Yep, that's correct. Ansible can pull straight from a Git repo, and again, that's what we recommend. A lot of different reasons, right? Auditability of who made changes to the playbooks, and you can also have different versions of things, so you might be testing something, right? There's a lot of things you can do, so we 100% recommend using Git. The other thing with that too is that it starts to fall into the digital transformation, the DevOps methodologies and everything that we see as well. How do you use Ansible outside of a single group, across groups? I like to always hear these questions because it helps me understand how is Ansible being used in the use cases that it's being used to try to resolve, and what are you trying to look at now, and what's on the horizon as well, especially again talking about self-service, things like that. Looks like there's no other questions or anything, so we will go ahead and conclude for today. Please do not hesitate to reach out to us. We definitely want to understand more about what you're looking at, challenges, things you're trying to solve, so that we can help you with your automation journey. So again, appreciate everybody's time and look forward to hearing from you. And until next time, take care.